Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall. We got the fourth event of the season that's going to be going down here in just a couple weeks, September 15th through the 17th, and it's going to be the NXL Windy City Major. And as always, we love this game, love this sport. Can't wait to see what's going to be going down. There's a lot at stake, and as always, got a laundry list here, just a straight murderer's row of legends in this sport to help us break these brackets down. We got Todd Adamson, Hall of Famer. We got Todd Martinez, also Hall of Famer. Roy Richard, who has played for many of the top teams throughout the years, to help us break these brackets down. 4 brackets as the stage is set here for this fourth event. Still sitting at top is San Diego Dynasty. And as we bring in our cohort with Todd Adamson, Todd Martinez, and Roy Richard. But yeah, San Diego Dynasty sitting still at the top and with a decent lead in the series race. X Factor and Damage are right on their heels. They are 7 points from each other, with X Factor in second place. And even with that win that Tampa Bay Damage took at the last event in very dramatic fashion, in another one-on-one double overtime situation for Jacob Edwards, as he was triumphant yet again as they took that victory. So, but still, X Factor still sitting at second place, and then Houston Heat going to be sitting there at fourth place. Also, not that far behind. They're 3 points behind Tampa Bay. So, depending on how things go for these next 2 events, things could be very interesting. And again, we have Todd Martinez, the coach of Houston Heat, here with us again, along with Roy Richard and Todd Adamson. So let's bring them in right here. We got, again, Roy Richard, Todd Martinez, and Todd Adamson, some legends in this game. Before we kind of jump into things here, Roy, we'll start with you. We got Chicago coming up here. Chicago, notoriously very difficult to win. And a lot of people are always asking, why should Chicago be any harder to win than any of the other events? What are your thoughts on that? Why is Chicago so hard to win? You've played this tournament many times. What do you think?
It goes back to the old school days of the Badlands, right? Aftershock. You heard stories of the old lumberjacks coming out to play paintball and willing to murder people on and off the field. And so I think that's where it all started. It's always been, an iconic place to play. It's, usually the third, fourth event of the year. So you can have some hiccups along the way, but it really sets the tone for World Cup. It puts a lot of pressure on teams to step up here and kind of set that tone going into World Cup on where they're going to finish for the year, right?
Todd, let's go right to you next. Yeah, I mean, to me, Chicago is so difficult to win because it's like at the end of the year with World Cup, there's added pressure because it's the last event, so much resets at the end of the year, and you have no excuses because you've had all year long to get your team dialed in. Chicago, though, is, typically an event that's midway through the season. It has now been pushed a little bit more towards the back end of the season, the past, 10 years or so, just because the weather is a little bit nicer in Chicago back than when we were playing it in the dead of summer. But the point is kind of always that you don't really have any excuses anymore. I mean, you've had months and months and months to dial your team in. You as the coach of Houston Heat, I mean, it's been a little bit since you guys have won a tournament. You keep losing these heartbreakers on Sunday. We're going to get into this in a little bit. But why is Chicago so difficult to win in your opinion?
Well, Chicago's known for gunplay, right? Mobsters with Tommy guns hanging out the sides of cars, bullets fly, it's a tough place to make it, right? So I feel like it's just got that old school feel whenever you go out there. But really, it's just, for several years, you're playing in Chicago and, the refereeing was always hard when you had Aftershock out there reffing it. It was always in the mid to end of the year. So you had the extreme heat, it was hard to play in. People always have to prove themselves, but like you said, Chicago is definitely an iconic tournament that everybody wants to win. So I feel like this year going in, it's going to be tough to win because there's been a long break. A lot of teams are hungry. People are chomping at the bit to get back together, to get back on the field. I know a lot of teams have been playing throughout the summertime, and it's just, it's going to be a grinder because everybody wants to have a good finish going into World Cup.
And then Todd Adamson, I mean, he's talking about Chicago Aftershock with some Lumberjacks. You played on that team. You played on the Los Angeles Ironmen. You also played on the All-Americans. You're one of those teams that's played for, the OG Big Three back in the day. You're now currently coaching the Killers, top level semi-pro team coming up, and playing 10-man as well too. I mean, there's no one that's a stranger in this group to Chicago. But before we kind of dive into these brackets here, Todd, what's the gravity of this event? Why is Chicago so difficult to win, in your opinion? Or do you even agree with that? Do you feel it's just another tournament, or is this thing particularly difficult to win in the context with the rest of the tournaments?
No, it's definitely, by pushing it, this event in particular, pushing it out a little bit closer to World Cup and closer to the end of the year. I think the teams that are in the hunt are really going to have to, everybody's coming here. This is almost like they're playing the World Cup, because they know if they can't get that extra bite right now and leave it all to hang out at World Cup, it's going to be, with the margin, it'll be tough. It's a stigma, right? Because like Todd Squad said, it's Chicago. It's a big city. It's gritty as fuck is what it is, right? So when you get there, from the time you land to the time you get to the hotel, you get to the field, you feel that little edginess. It's a little sketch. Yeah. Boom. It's sketchy, right? So that's it. That's the ticket. And this will be the one that everybody has to prove something right now to get that position to be able to make it and get ahead of Dynasty.
Before we jump into the brackets, I kind of want to just put everyone on the spot. Roy, I'm going to start with you. Who's your favorite to win this event? We're going to dive into these brackets. We got again, 4 brackets with 5 teams each, and everyone's going to have a favorite. It's easy to pick Dynasty right now, especially with the fact that they did get knocked out by San Antonio X Factor after having a crazy come from behind victory against Impact at the last event on Sunday. But Roy, obviously it's easy to pick Dynasty as the favorite, but do you think they can do it again? And if it's not going to be just as last time, and it's kind of been the main questions, or the kind of pair of questions that we've had for the past couple seasons, do you think Dynasty can do it again? And if you don't think they can do it again, who's the next team up that you think is going to get the victory? Roy, what are your thoughts?
Of course, Dynasty can do it again, right? Like, they've been doing it for a while, especially lately. But, my gut on this one, just because of what we just discussed, to catch Dynasty going into the World Cup, one of these other guys has got to win. That's, whether it's X Factor, Damage, Heat, Impact, New York Extreme. One of those guys has got to step at this event and win to have a chance at catching them, and hope Dynasty doesn't have a high finish here. So, being that said, it's been a while since I've seen Heat on the podium, and this is not because you're here, Todd, but going into this, I feel like it's going to be Heat or Impact with the win here, and I'm torn between the two, but I'm going to call Heat or Impact as coming out as the victors at this event.
And it's going to be tough for Roy to say, because Roy has played with Dynasty and some 10-mans. Those are some of his really good friends. But yeah, I think Heat's a good pick here. Todd, then flipping it to you, obviously you're going to pick Heat, but let's just take Heat off. Let me put it this way: who do you think you're going to face in the finals? Because I know you're very confident, as rightly you should be. Heat is definitely overdue for a win. You guys have been losing these heartbreakers on Sunday, and it's been kind of really tough. Little bit of a change up in the lineup, not a ton heading into this next event, but because again, if I ask you who's going to win, you're going to say it's going to be Houston Heat. Of course, you got to feel confident in your boys. But who do you think you guys are going to be facing in the finals?
Man, to be perfectly honest with you, we've been knocked out of 2 events this year by Tampa Bay Damage. And last weekend, we got a chance to go and play at NRG Elite's field, thanks to Alan, and played against them all weekend. And one of our local buddies came out and played with us, named Jacob Edwards, and getting to play with him and hang out with him, it was a lot of fun, just to how do I say this? Like, he had a really good attitude. He was a lot of fun to be around. And I was just kind of asking him, how their practices have been going, what they've been doing this year. And, they're putting in a lot of time. I talked to Joey Bluth the other day, and he said that they put in a lot of time this year. They're connected. They're playing well. They're hungry. They have a lot of guys stepping up. And, over the last, 2 years now, they've won 2 events after, having a pretty decent drought as well, right? And I thought it was mainly because they just seem like they're more together, I definitely give Joey a lot of credit on, coming back to coach and, the players, the ones that have been there for a long time and the guys that are newer to the team, to just putting in a lot of effort. I feel like 99% of the game is effort and focus and mentality. And I feel like that those guys are doing a really good job of that. We practice X Factor all the time. We're not practicing them this event. We're going to play Diesel in the Ironman. So, I always feel like X Factor has a shot. Ryan Brand's a great coach. They've been very together. So, other than us, who I feel like, it's always been like one little thing here or there, most times, self-inflicted. I feel like Damage and X Factor are 2 teams that are definitely due to win an event.
Well, they are riding the high after both coming out of the finals. Obviously, Damage with the miraculous, insane win with, I was like, were you just kind of through osmosis trying to suck up some of the cocky swagger that Jacob Edwards must be exuding at this point in the time in his life because of all these big heroic moments that he's having? Because Jesus Christ, dude,
Yeah.
that guy, he's got the thing, it's like the undescribable that thing. He's got that thing. He's had that thing for a long time, but it's been impressive to see what he's been doing for his team and really not even just in the one-on-ones, in also low body situations, bowling ball down the D side, stealing points. It's insane.
100%. And just to add one more thing, with the pickup of Silos Cortez to NYX, if they get the right field, I think they might be a sleeper to win the event as well.
That would be absolutely massive if New York Extreme could rise to the occasion and put their first win up ever. They've been arguably the most consistent team in the prelims. They have only lost 1 game all year long, heading into the 4th event in the prelims. Todd, we'll throw it to you before we start diving into these brackets here. Do you think Dynasty can do it again? I'm sure you do, but is that a call? Are you going to call Dynasty in this, in Chicago, which they won 2 years ago, MVP being Alex Frazier? And then if it's not going to be Dynasty, who do you got winning the tournament?
Well, I picked Damage and X Factor last event, and then you guys sort of kicked me off the after tournament show, which I understand.
You kicked yourself off the after tournament show, bro.
So, like I said, this is going to be no, for sure. I wasn't unavailable. I was rallying in my win. So no, this one's going to be a lot of work, right? It'll still be a little spicy up there weather-wise. The ones that kept the grind on through this hottest global warmed summer ever, there will be that's the ones that's going to be able to perform, right? So those guys will begin the hunt. That Group C bracket's crazy, but I'm thinking that it's going to be actually, and this is not because Todd Squad's on the show. I think the finals might be NYX and Heat in the finals.
That would be so dope. That would be amazing. It would be good for the game, but wow, that would be also a shootout too, because both those teams like to push the issue.
It came to me in the night, so I don't like to give up my sources, but that's what I'm like. Dynasty's so powerful. My boys Damage, they like Todd was saying, they literally, Joey has got them dialed in, the self-discipline and selfless, no selfish, they're working together. It's all come to a head. So, and they'll be a force to be reckoned with. But
well, let's dive into these brackets here. Let's start with bracket A. Dynasty, speaking of Dynasty New York Extreme, it's Dynasty and New York Extreme top in this bracket. along with the ML Kings, Notorious, and Uprising. Roy, going to start with you here. Let's go Roy, Todd, as we go through this, unless somebody has got a hot take that they want to jump in on. But look, you can't overstate how dominant Dynasty has been for the past 2.5 years. Since the COVID break, they have won over half of the tournaments. They won the first two, took third at this last one. It's going to be very difficult to beat Dynasty in any way, shape, or form, whether it's prelims or on Sunday. Also going to, a lot of the Dynasty guys just went over to Europe and shout out to Team USA, sweeping the field, winning every single one. They won the veterans, they won the women's, they won the kids and just the regular, Team USA. So, I mean, yeah, way to hold it down, boys. And a lot of that was, Skinny Kevin was the coach for that. And a lot of those guys were San Diego Dynasty players with a few guys here or there. Pat Kraft was there. Colt Roberts was there. So we had X Factor New York Extreme represented, but it was a lot of the Dynasty guys. But that's, so it's Dynasty New York Extreme, ML Kings, Notorious, and Uprising. So I'm just kind of wondering, as always, when we go through these brackets, is who do you guys think is going to be 1 and 2? And do you think a wild card comes out of this bracket? Roy, what do you think?
I think Dynasty comes out of this 1. New York comes out of this 2. ML Kings could be a wild card out of this bracket, but I don't think it happens for them at this event. I've got my wild cards in other brackets. We saw some improvements from Austin Notorious at the last event. They went from 20th place the event before, jumped up to I think 12th or something like that.
10th.
So that
10th, they made Sunday.
10th, yeah, they jumped up to 10th. Yeah, so that's right. So it was good to see that progression from them. I just don't see them making it out of this bracket. And then Uprising still, they've been incrementally increasing as the year goes on, but I just don't think it's there for them yet. But they have been slowly improving each event throughout the year. So again, Dynasty coming out of this 1, New York coming out of this is the 2, and then the other 3 aren't going to make it.
Todd Martinez, what do you think? Do you agree with that? Disagree? Because if people are unaware of this and you're kind of catching this for the first time or just got into paintball, so we got 20 pro teams, 10 will move on, 2 from each bracket, and then 2 wild cards. So when you're looking at these brackets, you're always wondering, okay, who's going to be 1 and 2, and then who's going to catch those other, as the top 8, and then who's going to catch the other 2 wild cards. And it's difficult because even if you go 3 and 1, sometimes you'll end up in the wild card round playing a team that's probably going to be 2 and 2. Every 5 years or so, we'll have a team go 1 and 3 and make it into the wild card round. I do not think that's going to happen here. That's not some, it's not like a giant crazy thing that it's like, that's just kind of how it is. But Todd, so kind of break this bracket down a little bit. Do you agree with Roy? Do you think it's going to be Dynasty New York Extreme and then no wild cards, or do you see maybe Notorious catching a wild card? Uprising has been super inconsistent for the past, basically forever, because you never know who they're going to show up and beat. They love to play the spoilers, but they have been just insanely inconsistent as far as, the 4 games in the prelims to, be there on Sunday on a regular basis, though they have caught a few Sundays past couple seasons. What do you think?
Well, this bracket's fun because, Uprising being the tier 5 team, could go 4-0, could go 0-4. 6 mercy rules, getting losing 6-0 every game or winning 6-0. You just never know. They're the most complete wild card team. Notorious has higher expectations set at this point. The ML Kings are a team that felt like they should have made it in last time, but because of the way the numbers played out, didn't make it in, but had been playing pretty consistently over the past year and a half, right? But as long as there's no upsets between Dynasty and NYX, if one team goes 4-0 and one team goes 3-1, then one of the other teams, Kings Notorious or Uprising, would have to beat the other 2 teams to go 2-2, right? And then if you're one of those teams to go, if you're the team that goes 2-2, then you just have to hope that your point margin is going to be enough to make it in as one of the wild cards. So there is a chance. I think Notorious beat ML Kings last time, or the other way around, but they were in the same bracket. So that's definitely going to be a grinder of a game. But
Hey,
again,
just real quick,
Uprising could very easily win both of those games.
just real quick. Yeah. So to what you were saying, Notorious going 2-2 at the last one, scraping in, and then taking the 10th place, even though they were -6 overall with their plus minus. Notorious beat the ML Kings the last time they played. It was in the very first game. It was 5-3, pretty close match. And then with the ML King, the ML Kings have been on the bubble at 2-2 pretty much all year long. 11th, 9th, and 11th place for the first 3 events. So that I don't know if this is going to be the bracket of death, Todd. I mean, kind of what you were saying about Uprising, and we talked about this on every show. We're going to continue to talk about this. When you look at that bottom 5th tier, whoever shows up there, because the Ironmen are down there, Legion is down there, Uprising is down there, and the Saints have an uphill climb. But those other 3 teams, if they show up and they're good in Chicago, well, then that's really going to dictate what the bracket of death is. Because if Uprising shows up and doesn't have their best form and they have a rough time of it again and can't win games, well, then that's not going to be the bracket of death. Same with the Ironmen and same with Legion. But the fact that you have Legion, Ironman, and Uprising down at 5th tier, that kind of creates a very interesting situation as far as the story is concerned. But yeah, as it stands, ML Kings Notorious beat the ML Kings the last time they played.
Yeah. So I mean that the ML Kings are coming on that one, but again, Notorious, high expectations now after making Sunday. Harris Hussein, he's going to be on a hot one, right?
They got Michael Kovar back,
and
Kovar's back.
Yeah, Kovar back's going to be huge. So, I think one team in there, as long as there's no upsets, going to, always have a chance to squeak in if they can win their other 2 games at 2-2.
Todd Adamson, what are your thoughts on this bracket here? Do you agree, disagree with what Roy and Mr. Martinez have said? What do you think?
No, I mean, like I said, NYX, one of my predictions to the finals. They're on a up and coming roll. Dynasty, you already explained it in a nutshell. Everybody knows it. The ML Kings, Kyle's really working. Those guys are starting to come beyond a middle Buffalo, right? So they're starting to chip away and get. All you got to do is play with confidence. Play with a little bit more confidence, and and finally you'll just you'll be able to keep climbing those rings. The Notorious, like Todd was saying, making it into the Sunday deal, and Uprising, they're a tier 5 team, and that's like being in prison and have to go wait at the end of the line for chow, and they could just run up right in front and act like the crazy insane and grab the plate to the biggest guy that's number 1 in line to get fed and say, get out of here. This is my food. Right. And they could pull it off, right? They could, it could work. But they got to swing. They got to swing for the fence every pitch really hard. So no, it's Dynasty and
No, I mean, look. First of all, I love your metaphors. I'm pretty sure you've never been in prison, but I don't know if you've been reading like prison novels or watching some crazy stuff on Netflix. But that was excellent the way you just dived
I was talking for Todd.
But look, Dynasty's the 800-pound gorilla. New York Extreme has been incredibly impressive. Again, they when you look at their plus minus and what they've been doing out there, they went plus 19 at the last event. They're just completely dominant pretty much at all these events. When you look at their plus 14 at the first event, this means like how many points for, how many points against, regardless of when they get knocked out. They've lost all their games to Legends on Sunday by 1. They've only lost 1 game in the prelims. I don't disagree with you at all about them potentially now picking up Silos too. We'll see how he fits in. And we'll see if everyone's healthy. That's always a problem with them too. But yeah, ML Kings, Notorious, and Uprising have they got some big problems with Dynasty and New York Extreme. If they can pull off an upset, that would be absolutely huge and a big message to the league. But I don't disagree with anything you guys said. Though this is a very fascinating bracket. And if ML Kings, Notorious, and Uprising show up and give their best game, this could be the bracket of death. We could see some madness in this one, and I can't wait to see how that bracket goes down. Let's move on to to Group B here, bracket B with X Factor, Impact, Revo, Energy, Elite, and the Ironman. This is another one that yeah, I don't know. This also, depending on how Revo, Energy Elite, and Ironman play, this also could be a bracket of death. Roy, what do you think about bracket B here?
To me, I think X Factor, Impact move on out of this bracket. Revo is that team that always, has a chance of making the wild card. They have many times over. Energy Elite, they've had some more off season or during season changes again. It's the second time this year between events that they've changed their roster up a little bit. I don't think they're there. They're not gonna punch their ticket to Sunday. And then the Ironmen, they've been struggling this year. They're obviously under Mike Paxton and Shane Pistana's guidance. It's going to be a time thing for them, and it's still going to take more time for them. So I strongly think that, X Factor, Impact come out of this. Impact, coming in this event, I think this is the lowest we've seen them ranked in a season in a good while now. And those guys are hungry. They're really hungry. And I know they've been putting some work in, more than they typically do. And so I think they're gonna come out swinging at this event, which is gonna, make the margin pretty hard for the other teams to get out of this one. So no wild cards out of this one again for me.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, as they all are when you kind of know these teams. I would like to get, Todd, I mean, your thoughts on Energy Elite. They lose Weaver and they lose their coach. When you kind of look at what they did at the last event, yeah, they beat Damage in a relatively fluke win. I say fluke because, they made the very first Sunday of the year. It's been 10th, 14th, and 17th for them. They beat Damage by 2, kind of out-damaging Damage, even though Damage goes on to win the tournament. So that's definitely a ray of light for them and something positive. But they also lost their other 3 games in the prelims. They got blown out by Dynasty. That was a mercy rule loss. They lost to the Bears by 2. Bears did not have a good event. That was their only win. Level also did not have a great event. They went 2-2, took 13th. But I'm just kind of scratching my head with Energy Elite. They seem predictable. They just lost one of their best players in Elliott Weaver. Elliott Weaver, in case people are not aware of his skill level, that dude has been balling out more. When I go and rewatch their games and while their games are happening, I say his name a lot because that dude can play the game. And then now they don't have Chris Jansen, their coach, either, but they just seemed a bit predictable. What are your thoughts, Todd?
Well, I think you said the most important things right there. Group B is the trade deadline free agent transaction bracket, right? X Factor loses Jesse Stevens,
Yep.
Impact, right? I think they might be the same, but Revo loses Geiger, picks up Weaver. NRG Elite loses Weaver, who might have been one of their best players, but they get Devin Stewart and Geiger.
Yep.
The Ironman, I think, was it before last event where they didn't have Nida and Dylan Boyum, I believe. But who knows? They may have picked up 3 new guys, cut 3 other guys, but we are going to be practicing the Ironman in Houston this weekend, along with, AC Diesel. So I feel like the Ironman, now they're going to finally travel out of California. Not that they don't get good practices playing Dynasty, Impact, but I'll get a chance to see, more like who's there, what they're all about, how's it going. But the Ironman, I had an inside source tell me that, they had a big come to Jesus meeting, talking about things that they need to do better. NRG Elite, I definitely think it hurts them losing their coach. Having a consistent coach is a huge factor in professional paintball. And then, having those new pieces in there. I think Betancourt's a baller, man. That kid was constantly on the attack last weekend, 2 weekends ago. I think he's a good player. NRG Elite shoots really well on the break. For them, it's always all about their mid game and end game, right? We always see them in really close games or being up and then let a team come back and then they lose the big points, right? For them, it's just more about, closing out matches, closing out games, closing out matches. And Revo, I love Henry. I think Steven's one of the best players in the league. I think that, their organization just all year has just been all over the place. It's been tough. and just trying to find, their identity, and now losing Silos is going to be huge. So again, I feel the same way about this bracket. X Factor, Impact, one of those teams, could very well be 4-0. One could be 3-1. I think less likely than bracket A. I think there might be an upset in there somewhere between Revo, NRG, and the Ironmen. But if it does end up being a 4-0, a 3-1, then, one of those other teams is going to have to go 2-2 to make it in.
Do you think we see a wild card out of this group, or do you think it's going to be Group C, Group D? I mean, I know you kind of just laid that down a little bit, but if I had to put your feet to the fire here, it's tough. I mean, honestly, this one's kind of one of the toughest to call, just because there has been so much turnover. Ironman still on a rebuild, Revo and Energy Elite constantly building / rebuilding, and then with X Factor Impact a little bit more solid, with a few changes here or there. But for the most part, this season really solid. Do you think we're going to catch a wild card out of this one, or do you think it's going to come out of C or D?
So I think that this bracket has a higher chance of having like smaller point differentials. I think there'll be some closer games in these ones. But if you look at bracket C and D, I feel like Diesel is going to come out. They've been putting in a lot of work. Picking up Mike Hinman has made a huge difference, for many reasons. And then I feel like, we haven't seen a very strong level this year. The Bears have not been great, but I still feel like they got a ton of talent. And with Aftermath, Aftermath will play 2010 damage paintball, and try and win, 1-0, squeeze every game out, right? So I feel like there's a higher likelihood that we see the two wild cards come out of Group C and D rather than A or B.
Todd, what are your thoughts on this one here? Again, X Factor, Impact, Revo, Energy Elite, Ironman. Obviously you were on the Ironman. You won some tournaments on there. It always kind of, me too, Todd as well. It's always a little frustrating to see the Ironman be down at the bottom of the barrel. They've had another one of those really frustrating seasons. Do you think they can pick it up? And then, in specific, and then in general, how do you see this bracket playing out?
I try to keep pretty close with Paxson, obviously, and Shane. They're trying to work it out. They're trying to get the right momentum going, the right feel. As Todd said, they had a big meeting, and everybody, is trying to get on the same page and make sure that, everybody's trying to work together. And, they've just had so many people that they can't get cohesiveness, should I say, and get that momentum going. You can't even start. You're not going to get ahead if you can't. Right. So yeah, it's painful. And, the organization, I would love for them to do well. But I think it's going to take a minute to start getting those baby steps and getting that feel and work off what's working, and, and try to capitalize on that and keep pushing. This bracket, X Factor, Impact is, I would expect something more than the results that they've done this year, for sure. I think that they're going to come out 1-2, whichever way it works, they're going to come out 1-2. Revo, NRG, with all that, switching people around, this, that, and the other, it's going to be a hard press to, could happen, like Todd said as well, get a 2-2. If they pick off one of the big guys to put them at a 3-1, then they could squeeze in it, but I don't see it at all. The bracket of death to me is C, and we'll get to it. I don't want to blow it away, but
yeah, no, I don't disagree. It's just, man, it's just tough with Revo. Revo always seems to impress when their backs are to the wall. Like anytime that I'm thinking, all right, well, Revo's not looking too good right now from what I've been hearing, and then all of a sudden they show up and they have an event. Losing Silos, I mean, Silos he's a lethal weapon out there. He can be. They obviously, picked up some bodies, picked up Geiger. Silos is a little bit more, I mean, they're both explosive attackers, but Silos is a little smaller, a little bit more mobile. But they're a team that, Benny Carroll's really good. I totally agree with you. He's crazy. I think Omara's Omar's one of the best players in the league, has been for almost going on a decade now. It's been impressive. I don't know. Is Henry still, is he healthy? Is he going to be playing? I'm not even sure. He was on crutches at the last event.
He's
so
out.
not going to be playing. Yeah. So, I mean, that, we'll see. And then Energy Elite, it's like, it's like with a lot of these young teams coming up. I'm like, look, man, I mean, I've been watching professional paintball for a long period of time. I played it forever and then been calling it for damn near 20 years now. Like, all right, well, impress me, I mean, make me say your name and, running one play. They beat Damage and I got to give them that credit for that. But that's a team that I think I like Alan a lot. And I like that program and I know that they've been working at it, but it's kind of running around that time where they need to be making that uphill climb. And when you're kind of looking at their, 10th, 14th, and 17th this year, that's not the way they're going, the opposite direction they should be going. And then the Ironmen have just been incredibly disappointing to me. I'm not going to lie about that. I love, obviously, Shane Pastana. In my mind, he's, the greatest paintball coach ever just because of what he's done over the, 3 different incarnations of the sport itself. And then as a player, I mean, he's never touched that team and they haven't won. How long is it going to take, though? And I think it's great that he has got Nikki and Mike obviously helping him, and they have talent, but they've been disappointing. I mean, if you're in the bottom tier, if you're in tier 5 and you're the longest running pro team in existence and you made a, run this year on some talent, like they need to do better. And they know that. That's not, I'm not speaking out of turn here. That just is what it is. This is just the facts. Let's move on to Group C. Damage, Hurricanes, Diesel, Level, and Saints. Obviously, the Saints have had a real big struggle this year. It's going to be hard for them to win a game. I know they think they picked up Colin Cherry. They made a couple moves here or there, but like Greg, we've talked, dude. Hey, you guys need to make some changes, and you need to do what you did last year. You need to save your spot. You're sitting at the bottom of the barrel, and if you go into this next event and you lose every single game by a big margin again, well, that means you really have to turn things around before World Cup just to save the spot. But Level, who's taken 3rd at an event before in the past year and a half and has been drastically underperforming, they lost Sam Soberg, but they still have a lot of talent on the team. They don't have Corwin Weber. I don't think Weber's coming back quite yet. I hope they do for their sake. He was like one of the most charismatic 2s, second attackers that had emerged on the scene in the past couple of years. Then blew his knee out in a skiing accident. But, with Diesel, I mean, Jesus, talk about underperformance. That's a team that now bringing him in. I mean, I don't think it would surprise anyone for them to be even with Damage in it, to be at the top. Roy, let's throw it to you, though. I'd agree with Todd. I think this is the bracket of death, even with Saints in it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the bracket of death personally. I think, unfortunately, with the Saints in there, that's an easy win for the rest of the teams. So what that means to me is that there's a wild card coming out of this. Right now, I have it as Damage coming out as the 1, Diesel coming out as the 2. I liked what I saw from them at the last event. It was a step in the right direction. The first 2 events, they underperformed massively for the talent on that roster. They shook things up a bit going into that 3rd event, and it seemed to work for them. I think they pushed, a deeper in Sunday at this event. So I've got Damage 1, Diesel 2, Hurricanes coming out of the wild card spot here. And it wouldn't surprise me if Hurricanes were the 1 or 2 out of here either. They've been playing really good paintball consistently, and they've been, making those steps we've been talking about to go in the right direction. Level, I just, they've underperformed all year, and they haven't given me any reason to think that they're not going to underperform at this event. Obviously, they've showed up before in the past, but I don't think it's here in this bracket. And then the Saints, unfortunately, have just been getting stomped on all year, and I think that continues here.
Todd, what do you think, man? I mean, if you look at Level, just real quick, just to throw this out for everyone, if you look at their performance at the last event, they were able to beat their lower ranked teams with Energy. They shut them out. Actually, it was a 3-0 win, and then they beat the Bears by 1. But they lost to their top-ranked teams, and it wasn't close. It was a 2-7 loss to Damage and a Mercy Rule loss to Dynasty 1-7. How do you see Group C going down?
Well, for Group C, I definitely feel like it's going to be Damage in the Hurricanes. And that Damage Hurricanes game is going to be a great game to watch. You know, I think that game is going to determine who goes in that 1 seed. Again, all the things I said about Damage, you know, I still believe. The thing I love about the Hurricanes is that their attitude is that the only thing that matters is what they do, you know, what they do together, how they perform, right? They don't really, you know, they do a good job of scouting, preparing, coaching. But at the end of the day, you know, they're always about, you know, it's just about what they do as a unit, right? They know how to play paintball. They've been a good team since they came into the league. I think that Damage and Hurricanes game is going to be a fun one for sure. Diesel, man, like you said, it's been inconsistent, but at least it's been on a upward trajectory, right? Bringing Mike in last event definitely made a big difference. We'll see now that he's got to spend at least more than 1 weekend with the team, how they end up doing. Again, we are going to practice them before the event. We play a lot, we grind a lot, they play a lot. You know, so you know that we're all going to come in having played the field over 100 times, right? And Level, you know, the thing about Level is that, you know, losing Robbie Goldsmith, you know, I do think that their coach does a pretty good job too, but he's just new to the job, right? It's hard when you're coaching against coaches who have coached for 20 years, you know, unofficially, you know, 10 years in the league, yeah. Right? Like, you know, he's got to go against 3 coaches that have, you know, coached for, you know, over 50 years, right? Probably right, in his division, right? So, you know, he's in for a good one there, and it's all about making those adjustments, right? Scouting and making those adjustments. I feel like that was their issue last event, right? They just didn't make the adjustments that they needed to make quick enough. Now with that practice, and then on to into the tournament. And the Latin Saints, you know, the league doormat, right? The cellar dwellers, you know, the bottom boys, you know, they just get beat on by everybody, you know, and I wish there was something good to say about them, you know, but they don't even look cool, you know, like their orange and black uniforms, you know, just no swag, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's kind of sad, right? It's like I want hyper competitiveness. I want parity. I was happy to see what they did at the end of the year, at least, where they brought in some dudes and kind of threw down a cup and saved their spot. But my God, yeah, dude, it's been rough. It's been rough for them. And you know, you really these are the NXL is the tip of the spear for the entire world in paintball. And you cannot come into this league and think that you can just throw whatever out there and have whatever, you know, guys on your team. And I mean, we saw this last season. You know, what's fascinating about New York Extreme's journey is that when we were having this same discussion at this time last year, New York Extreme was on the precipice of potentially getting relegated. And now we're talking about them maybe winning the tournament, you know, and they didn't really make that many player moves. But that's how hard it is out here. And that's how difficult and that's how small the margins are. So the Saints have some work to do. It's blatantly apparent. And to be honest, anyone that's saying anything differently is either not watching or, you know, just kind of singing the Latin Saints company line. And that's fine. But, you know, I mean, we got, as it stands every year, there's 20 teams. One goes down and one comes up. You know, is it going to be, looks like it's probably going to be Paintball Fit again. Last year we thought it was going to be Paintball Fit. Or Blast Camp, and then it ended up, you know, the boys from Notorious stole it at Cup. So, you know, I think it's going to be interesting. That's also emerging story. We'll have more coming at you in different shows for that. But yeah, dude, the Saints are not doing enough, and they need to do more, and that is just the way it is. That is just reality for them. Todd, what do you think about this bracket?
If it's plus 15,000, you throw $5 on it, though. You know what I'm saying? For sure.
I mean, for sure. But that's where the odds are at. Todd, you're gambling. Todd Adamson, you're gambling, man. What do you think, bro?
Oh, absolutely. I throw it. It's no sweat. It's no sweat. No, like I said, this is the bracket of death of the 4 brackets. It's pretty nasty. Damage being so powerful, you know, they're riding, right? The Hurricanes super consistent, super strong. They, as Todd said, they all play together. You know, I'm not familiar with a lot of those guys, but their organization and when they came in, I followed them a little bit. I've asked other people about how they do things, and they're, you know, they sort of keep to themselves, and it works, right? They keep their own little posse and their focus and their goals, and they're achieving their goals on what they do, and it shows, right? You know, Mr. Hinman going to Diesel is, like I said last time, it's going to change the dynamic now that he's got a little time under his belt to get all the working parts together and everybody on the same page and all the personalities together and understand the common goal, sort of like the Hurricanes, and level, minus those losing a couple people, this, that, and the other of what's happening with them. They super strong, super consistent. I think they're much tougher than people put them at. I've watched some of their games. Their games aren't necessarily getting just, you know, mercied. And then the Saints, you know what I mean? Todd, my mom always told me, you ain't got nothing nice to say about somebody, you don't say nothing. Okay.
I'm pretty sure Todd's mom said the same thing.
She did. He don't listen. So the Saints, you know, Greg's deal, he got it passed to him, and I mean, they're doing what they can, right? They're doing what they can. I try to say, if I was given a professional, other than my wife's WNXL team or coaching the Killer Semi-Pro, if I got thrown in and got the Latin Saints, right? If I had the Latin Saints, it would be my goal to not get mercied, to just sort of a damage, you know, 2010, even though they're playing ability player for player is so light years off possibly in certain situations. I would just have everybody hide and cross up and fucking, the guns are the same, right? Everybody's guns are the same. And then if they got close, then they could do their little Spanish Armada and attack them. Just run on everybody. I'd either blast them right off the rip or just hide, one or the other. And that way, it's got to be better than whatever's happening, right? I mean, so tore up, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to look,
basically what I said.
Yeah, well,
yeah, basically
that
what
was
you
like
said.
that was the Southern charm. That was the Southern charm
That's
version
right.
of it, though, Todd.
That's right. So no,
But
I got damage. I got damage coming out 1. I got Diesel coming out 2. They will be competitive on Sunday. They will be, and I've got Hurricanes as the wild card coming out of this bracket.
yeah, I think that's a solid call. To be honest, on this one, this isn't like a big, huge bet or anything, but I was wondering what an odds maker would take on this. But I think Diesel, if they don't go top 4 at this one, I'd be really disappointed. You know, and they've now had some time. I know it's kind of at this point with the way things have gone down, but when you look at their personnel and their coach and their desire and their hunger and the training they should be putting in at this point in time, I don't think this is a tough one from like a big long shot call to say that, you know, like, are they going to win the tournament? I don't know. You know, I mean, it's been so rough for them this year that they might be a little shaken internally. Maybe not, you know, maybe they still have that razor's edge, but I think that a top 4 here would be really good for them to set them up to go to World Cup and then try to surprise everybody. But that's how difficult it is at the top level. But I think that I'm going to predict, I think Diesel top 4 at this one. If they don't finish top 4, I'm going to be very disappointed. And if I was Mike Hinman and we don't take top 4 at this one and go in high at World Cup and try to actually win a tournament and surprise everybody, heads are going to roll in the offseason. You know, if I'm Mark Johnson and I'm Mike Hinman, that would be me if I was running that team and I was the coach, you know, because again, Roy, you've been there for this. Todd, I've never played on the same team with you. If it was maybe some all-star teams, but I know you think the same way. And then Todd Martinez, we've definitely thought this way many times. We're not running a club here. This isn't a club. We're not just showing up to play paintball for fun here. Trying to be the best team in the world, and we're trying to win tournaments. And at a certain point, you got to cut the bullshit and start heading towards that trajectory of the goal. And so, and since they've, and I know that, like, I talked to Mark about this. He has a long-term view of this, and I respect that. But there are certain immediate things that I would be, if I was running that team as a coach, that I would be saying to guys, is like, the axe is sharp, man. I love you guys, and we're paying you money, and I know you're successful, but and it's like the San Diego Padres right now. We have like this insane roster with all these this murderer's row of hitters, and they're absolutely terrible. And so maybe the vibe's not right. Maybe we got to shake things up and bring some new people in. Maybe you got to, we'll sell your contract off to somebody else. That's not how it works in paintball, but this is paintball, dude. This ain't Major League Baseball. We haven't been here for 140 years. Something needs to change, Diesel. And this is the event now that they have Mike for their second event. Like, they need to show up, and I think that those guys know that, and that's why I'm calling Diesel in top 4 at this one. I don't know if they have enough to win it yet. Prove to me you can do it. But I think top 4 for this one. And then the Hurricanes are just, to me, like one of the most. I don't. There are a few teams I respect more as far as work ethic and what they've done in the small amount of time they've been here than the Hurricanes. I mean, it's if you don't respect the Hurricanes, I don't know what you're watching, and I don't know how you were raised, because Jesus Christ, like, these guys are the most respectable team in paintball. They are like the blue collar ballers, dude. They have no hired guns. They literally came out of the semi-pro ranks. They weren't dominant in the semi-pro ranks. When you look at like PB Fit and Blast Camp, and I mean, even Notorious, like, they weren't winning a ton of tournaments either. But and then same with New York Extreme and some of these other teams that have bumped up. But that's the Hurricanes, after not being a dominant semi-pro team, show up and have made all these Sundays and earn all this respect. Like, how can you not respect and be impressed by what the Hurricanes have done? It's unbelievable. But they've made us believe in them. And I just tip my hat in respect to Mike Bianca and the boys from the Hurricanes. I can't wait to see what they do. But are they ready to progress and move through the first round of Sunday? That's the big question right now, and do that on a regular basis. Well, this is a pretty nasty bracket for them to see if they can prove themselves. But we do got to move on. Let's go to Group D. Heat, Infamous. This might be the bracket of death. Depending on what the Bears and Legion show up with, because if Bears and Legion show up with the game, like if Legion shows up with their 3 or 4 starting badass dudes that they've had the past couple seasons, with whoever Floridians they want to throw in there, and those dudes want to play and play well, okay, well, that depending on the layout could be crazy. Bears, same thing there. And then we know what we're going to see out of Aftermath, a steady dose of some young, up-and-coming, hungry talent that can play different versions of the game. And then Infamous they have a lot to prove. I mean, talk about chips on your shoulder. Infamous should have a Gibraltar-sized chip, like a half dome in Yosemite-sized chip on their shoulder to not suck at this event. And then Houston Heat is the obvious favorite to me in this bracket. Roy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Heat, comes out real strong in this event. Like I said, they're my front runner to win this one. I think Infamous steps up and has a good event. So I've got Heat coming out as a 1, Infamous coming out as a 2. I think Aftermath rebounds from their last event, which I felt they underperformed at, and slides in as a wild card spot. I think Bears put up a good fight at this event. This is why I think this is more of the bracket of death. I think that, they show up to play here, and they could throw a wrench into some things. But regarding the Russian Legion, it's surprising to talk about them like this, but we've been talking about it all year now, right? And they haven't shown us that they have been able to play at the level we're used to seeing them play at. And it's been consistently poor from them all year long. And I think they continue on with that. So yeah, Houston Heat 1, Infamous 2, Aftermath coming in as the wild card, and Bears not making it, and Russian Legion not making it. But the Bears, like I said, I think they show up to play, and they could slide in. So we'll see.
I think that's a pretty accurate take. Todd, this is your bracket. You've been coaching Houston Heat, had some pretty much immediate success after an immediate disaster. I mean, you take over the team a couple years ago, don't make Sunday, come right back, win the next tournament. But then it's been a kind of a steady dose of of very frustrating performances on Sunday, and almost all of them have been losses by 1 point with made it to a finals in Philly, last year, and then got murdered by Dynasty. Other than that, it's just been Heartbreak City for you guys, but incredibly competitive, incredibly consistent, very rarely making drastic mistakes that do cost you anything in a tournament until Sunday happens. And then it'll be a small mistake that, that will cost you there. Sitting on a sixth, a second, and a fourth this year, sitting at fourth overall, only 3 points behind Damage, who won the last event, with 2 events to go. I mean, in some universe, considering how well Heat has done at the end of seasons before with multiple World Cup victories, in some universe, Houston Heat wins the next 2 events and wins the whole thing, and then ends up being the Cinderella story. Like that definitely happens in part of the Marvel universe here. So I'm just kind of wondering, as the captain of the ship, what are you guys thinking right now? I mean, how frustrating has it been for you guys to take these very close losses? And then what are you thinking about your bracket? I mean, obviously you think you're going to take first, and that's probably what we're all going to pick here. So I would like your view of this bracket, but just your thoughts in general on the mindset of the team heading into this big battle here in Chicago.
Well, I definitely like this universe, that we're in. I do coach the X-Men. I feel like I have so much talent on the team. It really sucked last event losing Chad George after that Diesel game. He hurt his knee and we didn't have him for the Damage game. So heard he's healthy. He says he's feeling good. Last event we did get Mishka back after not having him for a season. Really nice to have everybody there. And the practice that we had a couple weekends ago, like I said, was definitely a really good time. And everybody was playing well together. It was a good vibe. None of you guys, well, we haven't got Todd yet, but I feel like the Bears are due. I don't think the Bears are as bad as they played the last 2 events, right? But I do think that Infamous will be strong. I feel like Infamous has been pretty strong all year. They definitely gave us a really good game and played strong in Texas. The Russians, it is just like not having Smotrov has just been devastating for them. When you not only miss, one of, if not the best player on your team, and one of the best snake players in the game, one of the best young players in the game, when you don't have that guy, it's devastating, and it just goes to show, right? So I think it's going to be painful for the Russians, once again. I don't think they're awful. I think that they, just come out and just don't have enough firepower to win consistently. Like you saw them the last event, they came out, they had some good games, and then they couldn't sustain, right? In some games, they just seemed like they didn't have it together. But one thing they are good at doing is making adjustments with what they have. So, throughout the event, they tend to try and do what they can to figure it out. Aftermath, that they're going to play a million points leading up, right? They have their home field at ASG. They have their own field. They play a ton of points. Everybody in that team is young and can go all day for multiple days in a row without the cold tub and the hot tub and the Tiger Balm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just, have some medicine, have a little, a little Gatorade, and they're ready to go again, right? So, but they do have a style of play, right? And I feel like, as with a lot of teams, we didn't really mention this in like the other brackets, like the field layout's going to be huge. The field layout's going to be a big determining factor, right? Because, you get an 80-foot snake, that definitely helps AC Diesel a lot, right? You get a sit and hold 'em field, right? That a team like the Bears can go 4-0, Aftermath, we've seen them go 4-0 on a field where they could sit and lock it up, right? And I feel like we're pretty versatile. We can play any type of field. We're going to practice a lot, really dial in our drills like we always do. So I think that between Infamous, Aftermath, and the Bears, those are all going to be, and the Russians, I think they're all going to be tough games for us. But I feel like it's going to be very interesting to see the Infamous, Aftermath, Bears, Infamous game.
Well, I think that
this is the bracket of death.
No, I think this. Yeah, I mean, again, you never really know, and sometimes we'll call, oh, this is definitely the bracket of death, and it ends up being a different bracket. More often than not, it is the bracket that we kind of all figure out. But maybe like 60% of the time, this one, yeah, man. I mean, but I just think that if I'm you and I'm coaching Houston Heat, we've been doing really well, and we do end up in the bracket of death, and we emerge out of that, especially if you can get clear of the wild card round, even though we've now had multiple teams win tournaments coming out of the wild card round with Dynasty and Damage. But and Heat's done it before too, at World Cup nonetheless. But I just think that this is a really nice bracket for Houston Heat to emerge and go into the quarterfinals with a decent record, with some decent confidence, but also having got punched in the mouth a few times to make the changes that you guys need to make. Because I feel that Houston Heat is a team that does need to get punched in the face a bit. You watch, anyone's a fan of the UFC or mixed martial arts, and you watch these certain fighters, and there are certain fighters that they don't really perform their best until they got rocked real hard once or twice, and it's like, oh shit, I'm in a fight. Okay, all right, well, now I'm ready to kill. Now I'm ready to kill somebody. That's Houston Heat. Like, Houston Heat does not perform its best until it's been punched in the face a couple times, and that's not surprising when you got guys like Ryan Moorhead, Sam Monville, Chad George, Fedorov, Mishka. When you got guys like that on the team, so I think this is a good bracket. Honestly, when I'm looking at potential who could win the tournament, with how it's been a while and you guys are due, this is a really tough bracket, potentially the bracket of death. So you're going to get punched in the face most likely at some point in the prelims. Probably going to make it out of it and most likely be in the quarters, and if not, in the wild card. But still, this could be a really, really good situation for Houston Heat to try to win this tournament. Todd Adamson, let's move on to you. Do you agree, disagree? What do you think?
No, I agree. Obviously, I called Heat to the finals. But I will tell you, the Aftermath, Bears, Legion, Infamous, they're all gritty, right? They're gritty. So they're going to do that. They're going to punch, right? Because they're smart enough to know, but not smart enough to not, they're just going to give you a taste and see if it works, especially if they get into a bad situation. If they're getting outplayed and outhandled, you're gonna rattle them up, and they're gonna punch. It'll be some, and whether that works for them or not, they're either going to get blown out pretty good, or it's going to be a little tight. But I've got Heat, and you believe it or not, even with no Smotrov, Russian Legion will come out of this bracket. Okay. I didn't even have him as the coming out of the bracket as the wild card. I have Infamous coming out because Travis and those guys have been doing some work. They'll be the wild card. Legion will be a little sleeper in this bracket. Just watch and see.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to disagree with that, just because, when we're talking about teams that are due, Legion is due. I'm just kind of wondering, because,
how they do
Todd
it.
And Roy. Well, no, I am wondering how they do it, but I really do truly think, and we don't know how the layout's going to be. I mean, we haven't seen
Correct.
the layout. Once the layout comes out, that's going to be, obviously that could change a lot of our discussions about things. But with the way this sport works, we're currently sitting recording this before the layout has dropped, and so we don't really know. I mean, there are still a lot of principles within the framework of the game that are going to be there no matter what, regardless of the layout. But like Todd said, if the snake runs 80 yards down the field, if you can get into snake one easily and crawl all the way down and win a gunfight, and then crawl all the way down and be on their side, well, then, yeah, that's going to benefit an AC Diesel, an X Factor with Billy Bernaccia, a San Diego Dynasty, or even some of these up and coming teams. Whereas if it's more of a whole field, I mean, but again, and we could spend 45 minutes arguing, what style of field benefits what teams. But yeah, no one knows what that field's going to look like. No teams know. We do not know. We got to wait for that to drop here in a couple days, and that's going to definitely change a lot of stuff. But I do agree that the fact that Legion does not have a consistent snake attacker is going to hurt them. And I would almost like to see Malloy maybe even switch into that first attacker position on the snake. And I know that's a little bit of a risk, but they have just had very little production out of that snake one spot unless they put him in that position. And even though the 2 is traditionally a little bit more of a difficult spot to play, if you don't have a competent one, you really can't have the 2 do that much. And that's kind of been their Achilles heel all year long, because they have had Karslev on the D side, and then Sergey has been there, and then they got Kirill back, and they have Malloy. So they've had 4 of their starting 5. But, to kind of point to what Todd Martinez was saying is that, yeah, if you don't have, paintball, it's like the first attacker in the snake is the shortstop. He's the most important, player on the field, or he's the running back or whatever. Again, the point guard. Pick your sports metaphor. But he's the most important athletic player on the team. And so I'm just kind of wondering how important that position is going to be. And then, because, McDarby's been okay, and the other couple of Hispanic dudes they put in there, they picked up from Latin America, they've been competent, but not elite. And if they want to win games on a regular basis to make it to Sunday, they need somebody who's decently elite up there. Well, they have a guy, and his name's Alexander Burtnikov. That's Malloy. So, I would almost have them, and again, depending on how it looks, send Malloy as the one on the snake side. I don't know. We'll see. And then I do think the Bears are due. I definitely think the Bears are due. But yeah, I don't know.
The Bears and Aftermath. The Bears and Aftermath are gritty. Super gritty. Like Todd said, they Aftermath at ASG, they play 1,000,000 points. They're in California. They can just grind all day. The Bears are due because of their tenacity and the way they've been grinding after it. Maybe not getting the results they wanted, but they're after it.
Yeah. So that's all, again, the layout will be dropping here. We got the Windy City Major going down September 15th through the 17th, just a couple weeks. Before we do sign off though, Todd, I got to ask you, cause we got some Hormesis Go Sports content dropping here soon, as we were at the Joust and the Duel. Were you Team Glorious or were you Team Magnificent, Todd Adamson?
Well, you know what? I was Magnificent. Okay. I was Magnificent.
Oh, okay.
And my wife was Glorious. So if that's what you're leading into, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm just saying, because we got this, content that's going to drop. It was a fun weekend, but I didn't know if I should talk a ton of shit to you right now, or if I should, try to pat you on the back because we're on the same squad. But apparently you're Magnificent.
I'm sorry, we're breaking up. I didn't have the best weekend. You guys are breaking up. It's nice talking to you guys. My wife beat me. Everybody knows it. She beats me every day. It's nothing new.
So I thought Frank was the coach, or was she helping Frank coach for the Glorious? Two
matches, buddy. Two matches. Frank got me first, as much as I would like to my demise. It's much better if my wife beats me, then it works out. But yeah, they both beat me.
Yeah, why are you making him bring this up, Matty? That's pretty evil, you buddy.
Because this was a moment of glory for me, Roy. Okay, and I'm old and my knees don't work, so I don't get a lot of them anymore. So I was just, trying to sneak it in there, because then we got Todd here. Todd was the opposing coach, and we do have some content dropping here shortly. People can come check it out. I think it's super cool. Yeah, Todd, I didn't know if you were Glorious or Magnificent, so I didn't know if you were, because when I got there, Oliver was like, "All right, look, here's the deal. I think the Magnificent's a better team than you. I'm not going to bullshit you, and also, you guys are up by 1, and if you win this one, then you'll win the series for the tour." And I was like, "Oh, okay, no pressure. So my team's not as good." And he's like, "Well, I'm giving you Alex. You get Alex Frazier." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then there was like some dudes in the parking lot talking tons of shit. And literally, as I'm having this conversation with Oliver, and I was like, "Well, who's good on the Magnificent?" He's like, "Well, see those guys over there? That dude hit me up. He's like, I look like the guy on the Magnificent poster. I have to be Team Magnificent and Death to the Glorious." And as I'm like looking over, they're like, "Death to the Glorious," and they're like flexing on us. And I was like, "Oh man, this could be a rough day.
Yes.
This could be a rough day." But it wasn't.
It was a close game though.
Yeah. So yeah, totally. Well, Todd, just before we sign off, can we get it from your perspective? Like, what was the day like for you?
Me?
Todd Martinez.
Okay, so it was super fun. Yeah, no, it was great.
It was
I definitely had a good time. You know that we got all the Todd squad on the Magnificent. You know what I'm saying? We got Todd Adamson, me, and Todd Boyer. Right? I had a bunch of dudes on my squad that I knew. I had a bunch of hungry, crazy, wild animals. You know what I'm saying? We were in the cage. We had a dude named Grill Piece. You know, he had this platinum mouthpiece, and he was just chomping. He was mean mugging people in the parking lot, mean mugging people in the pits. He was going crazy, sweating and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like we had dudes. You know what I'm saying? We had some big dudes. We had some little dudes. You know, Matty had a guy that was wearing capri pants. You know, playing in Vans. You know, he had a dude that had a shark fin. You know, like guys playing in jorts, right? Like I'm looking at my squad. You know, we're just hungry. You know, just sharpening the swords. You know what I'm saying? Like the Magnificent is gonna go out there. We're gonna just chop heads off left and right. You know what I'm saying? We're lining up. We're looking at these fools like, you know, there's no chance. You know what I'm saying? Armor's clean. Armor's platinum. You know what I'm saying? Like my Jackson, you know, just all bezeled up, right? You know what I mean? Like my Jackson chains, you know what I'm saying? We're just looking medieval up in this piece, right? Like we are stunning, right? We're ready to come out and just slay the glorious, right? We're about to pack up that whole Hormesis RV and just send them all home, you know what I mean? So that the mommies ain't got to come pick them up, you know what I mean? We're calling, bring out your dead. The dude with the wheelbarrows are coming around. There's just body parts. This is what we're seeing in our heads, right? It's our heads, right? Before it even starts, right? And then I'm in there, and as we're just getting murdered, you know, I'm just sending these dudes out to the slaughter one by one. And I'm just like, who, you want to go? Yeah, I'll go. He comes back, you know, just carrying his head, you know what I mean? His head with the goggles still on in his hands, you know what I mean? Like body flops down, like you, next. Who wants to go? Another dude comes out, comes back, you know what I'm saying? Head, holding his head, you know, goggles still on, you know what I mean? And like, I couldn't tell who was who because all of it was like, everybody's going to wear the same shirts, right? So all of our shirts are just, you know, jouts, Magnificent, just dripping blood everywhere. You know, all our dudes are just beat. You know, I just got a pile of dead dudes, right, just laying there. You know, and Matty's over there, you know, having tea with Oliver and that dude with no shirt, right? The wearing a king's crown and a giant leopard sash, you know what I mean? And all my guys are just in a pile on the ground. They're like, Todd, you get out there. And I'm just like, Todd, who? You know, it's like, you know? Right.
Yeah,
So,
right.
you know, I did the smart thing, right? I waited until Matty left, and then we challenged him again. And when we had like 20 dudes and they had 4, and then we beat that ass. You know what I'm saying? They didn't want to see us.
Yeah,
that's how it went down.
About right. That sounds about right.
Yep.
No, it was hilarious because I saw Todd the next day. I came out for the duel, and like for people that haven't ever seen him out my shirt on, but I got a big ass tattoo on my chest that says "For tomorrow we die," in memory of some people that I knew that died young. And then Todd was like, "Hey, I was gonna post it yesterday. I'm gonna post it today though, but I was gonna post like for today we died because that's exactly what actually happened." But no, it was just funny for me because I show up and I'm like to the group because all the Magnificent dudes are just like Todd said, hype, like death to the glorious. They're just yelling at us, talking just tons of shit, and I'm like, man. Okay, well, I got Alex Frazier and I got Wayne, who works for, you know, Hormesis, and he's pretty good. Other than that, I know nobody. Like, there's not a dude there I know. And I go over, I'm like, all right, by a show of hands, just going to start it off. Hey, what's up? My name's Matty. How many, do we have any semi-pro guys here? No hands. Hey, all right, cool. Do we have any D1, D2? No hands. D3, one hand goes up. I got 22 dudes in my pit. One hand goes up from D3. I'm like, what's your name, bro? Okay, write his name down. I'm like, all right, D4, D5. Okay, let's just start with this. All right, let's just go back to the beginning here. How many guys play one-on-one on a regular basis and that's your shit? One dude's hand goes up. I'm like, okay, I got 2 dudes now out of the 22 that I'm gonna put that I'm going out first. And I was like, all right, how about this? Who feels confident like their gunfighting's their thing and they want to go out and like gunfight to victory here? And then 5 or 6 more guys' his hand went up. So that was my first 7 guys that I sent out, and they did pretty good. And then we just did like I call it, you know, like a baseball. It's the, you know, the batting order. I call it the gunfight order. And we just set up our gunfight order, and those dudes did pretty good. And we ended up winning by 22. So it ended up being glorious ended up being glorious in the long run. But yeah, but it was I'm not gonna lie, I was a little scared. So anyone that's watching that was on the Glorious, or if you played on the Glorious, your Cali boys held it down. Those dudes they really rose to the occasion, because we're talking about I had one D3 on dude on the roster, guys that do not play one-on-ones very often, but they showed up and were down to go, and we somehow were able to pull out this huge victory against the very loud and intimidating Magnificent that we were all, to be honest, I was a little scared in the beginning, but that's why it made it super fun. So it was a very fun experience. So if you get a chance to do it, we'll have that video drop in. Yeah, it was great. So super cool. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for sitting in with us here. It's going to be a fun event as always to see how things shake out for this 4th event of the year, the NXL event. It's going to be going down in Chicago, September 15th through the 17th. Roy Richard, Todd Martinez, Todd Adamson, you guys are absolute legends. Appreciate your time. Just last thoughts real quick before we sign off. Roy, what's the number one team you want to see play paintball at this event for whatever reason? Like, who is it? What are you tuning in for here at this event?
I'm tuning in to see Heat take one. You know,
okay.
There's a lot of guys on that team I like. You know, I like to see it get mixed up. I was just thinking about this the other day. When you watch a paintball tournament versus like an NFL season, right? You've got the whole long season in the NFL, and then there's a Super Bowl winner. Every paintball tournament is like the Super Bowl, and it's hard to win. And it's been kind of dominated by Dynasty lately. And I love the Dynasty and a lot of those guys on that team. But I love the sport of paintball, and I want to see some change. I want to see the guys on Heat show up to take a win and, an impact for that matter. I'd like to see those guys rebound as well. So that's what I'm tuning in for. And also, I think, those things would make World Cup more interesting. Seeing those points, that gap between Dynasty and the next 4 or 5 teams close a bit. So we have, a little bit more competition going into World Cup. If Dynasty comes out and takes first place in Chicago, it's going to be real tough for anyone to catch them. I haven't done the math on it or anything, but yeah, it's going to get real ugly real quick. So just for the sake and the sport of paintball, I want to see that gap closed on a bit here.
No, I agree. I mean, it would be fun to see Houston Heat after a little bit of a break finally put up a dub, considering how heartbreaking their Sundays have been so far with all these really close losses. Todd, I mean, obviously you're going to be thinking the same thing. You'd love to see Heat put up that W, but what are your last thoughts here on these brackets and heading into this big Chicago event, the last one before World Cup?
I want to see somebody come in and put up a dominant performance. I feel like we've had these games and, obviously Jacob Edwards won the last event with a 1-on-1, but I want to see somebody come in and have just a questions asked, dominant MVP performance all the way, start to finish. I want to see one person show up and be like, I've been putting in work all summer and I came here to put the team on my back though and win this tournament. That's what I want to see.
Kind of like Todd Boyer did to win the duel at in LA. That was what I saw out of Todd Boyer, who's an up-and-coming player, down the divisions. Yeah, I would love to see that too, because that would make my job a lot easier to award the MVP, because half the time when we get there, it's like, well, we can make a solid case for this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. I got to go talk to the coach, and it's really difficult. So yeah, I would love to see somebody show up and be like, I trained for this, worked my ass off for this, and I earned it. And I earned it the hard way. Todd Adamson, your last thoughts before we sign off. What do you think? What do you want to see out of this next event?
Well, it's difficult when we talk paintball. If I'm not playing it, I love everybody in paintball, right? So, but if I'm playing them, I hate them. So I made my picks. I'd like to see Todd Squad and Houston Heat, and have a very consistent and well-throttled event. Not that I don't have friends, Damage and every team, right? So it puts me on the spot in feelings wise, but like I said, I think NYX will do it. I agree. Diesel, in the top 4. And I think it's going to be a difficult event, but I think heat will prevail. I think my wife's team in the WNXL, which I coach, which we don't get to talk about too much, the Femme Fatales. We've got some new SoCal players on the team. We've done some pickups.
There we go.
I'm excited. The Killers in semi-pro were in 3rd. They had a great final showing under Billy, a good friend of mine, coaching while in my absence last event. So, and I have Extreme Rage, my 5, 7, and 10-man teams. We'll take all 3 of those events this weekend, coming up next weekend. So it's going to be hot. It's going to be awesome. You heard it here.
No, it would be very cool to see the Killers actually start to make things interesting in the semi-pro division, because it has not been that interesting so far. It's been dominant for PB Fit and the Blast Camp right behind them, and then the Killers. But hey, we're singing the same song last year with the Notorious kind of sneaking it away at the end. So that is definitely possible.
Not over. Nothing's over. Nothing's over.
No, for sure. And then, we definitely need to get a good show before World Cup to break things down for the WNXL. I just would like, because they don't play as many events, I kind of wanted to see how things were going to play out to get a good read before we head into the big last event. But there is a lot of stuff going on in all these levels, down in, semi-pro, every division, and then WNXL. But yeah, the top 20 pro teams throwing down September 15th through the 17th. It's going to be coming up here. Roy Richard, Todd Martinez, Todd Adamson, you guys are legends. Thank you so much for breaking things down with our 4 brackets as we head into this battle in Chicago. Who's it going to be? Who knows? I don't know, but it's always going to be interesting. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.